Hello, everybody, wherever you may be. My name is Larry, and my call sign is Kilo 7 Hotel November. Welcome back to my shack. Just really making sure the audio is good here. Hey, we might make a show of it. You never know. If we do, it's show 51 of Ham Radio Live. And can't sleep. Just one of those nights. They happen. Good band conditions tonight. Good band conditions. A lot of QSO parties this weekend for contests. Should be crazy. Pennsylvania QSO parties coming on this weekend. The Nevada QSO party and the Arizona QSO party. All three. Yeah. Tuning on 40. We are checking out the news from Australia. Here's the rig cam.
Yeah, well, that's probably true, buddy. VK2 Sugar Radio, WABOZ, the group, and, things happen, and it's too bad, but anyway.
Good example of a net here.
Enjoyed it, and
let's tune around a little bit, see what else we can come up with. Our friends at 7163 might be available. Have to see. Usually the signal's a little weak here in the Northwest because they are from South Florida, and they pretty much beam, for the most part, south and east from the southeast East Coast. So, different direction. They're usually right there. Now, if we turned a web SDR on, they'd be there. But, not there.
It's a dipole with radio extended at about 45 Okay, John, I'll put it back to you before we get lost here. Victor Kilo 2 for Paul Romeo for Whiskey November 4 Hotel Oscar Golf.
Let's see if we can hear the Victor Kilo come back. Nope, way out there, way out there. Gives you a good idea. Let's take a look a little farther up. Station testing there, sounds like from the South Pacific. We talked about station testing, FCC rules. You have to give your call sign, okay? And make the transmissions short. So this is a good example of a station that's doing some testing, most likely from Australia or could be New Zealand, New Guinea. Now, one thing to keep in mind for the test, and this will be a test question, okay? You are supposed to use minimum power, okay? So the lowest amount of power you can use. It's helpful if you're going to listen on an SDR, a web SDR, to hear your audio. And that helps you with things like setting your... That helps you with things like setting your parametric equalizer on your microphone, adjusting all of your processing, adjusting your mic gain, making sure that everything sounds good. And also, it's a good way to just hear your signal and which direction your antenna is propagating. You can learn a lot, especially with wire antennas, because dipoles often they broadcast broadside. So, meaning that if you were to look at the wire straight on, not looking straight at it, seeing it like in an upside down V pattern. So, for example, just for people who are new hams or would like to be in ham radio. All right, find a blank piece of paper here to show you. Okay, if you looked at some wire and it was a dipole, typical dipole, it would be shaped like this. Okay, let's just say it's got a tower in the center. All right. So it would be something like this, all right? The wire that you can see is right here and here, okay? Comes down. That would be what's called an inverted V antenna. Now, if you were to do something like this, but if you were to look at it, instead of at this angle, imagine looking at it at that angle. So from the wires, looking straight down those wires. Typically, those will broadcast broadside. So away from the V. That's the best way to look at it. Now they'll still transmit around the edges too, but most of the gain is going to be outward from that V. When you're listening on a web SDR, this will help you determine exactly where your signal goes. It's a good tool. So perhaps you might use the web SDR here from the United States. From my area in the Pacific Northwest, I might first tune in Utah. That's east of me, to see if the signal's reaching there and how well it is. I also would check San Francisco and then Austin, Texas, and gradually work my way outward from there. It's very cool to see how they propagate, especially wire antennas. Verticals are always omnidirectional. And for new hams, folks that, are not in the hobby, that would like to learn more to maybe get your test, your test done, omnidirectional pattern, essentially, if we were looking at it from the sky, is going to go the same direction all the way around. And forgive my terrible third grade artwork, okay? It's going to essentially just radiate out. Think of it like throwing a pebble in a pond and you see the ripples all go out. That's how a vertical antenna transmits, okay? So those are the basic differences and why you would use a web SDR when you do testing. It's just good practice, and it will help you when you're doing tests like this gentleman from VK area was, to be able to hear your signal and then make your adjustments on board your radio or your processing gear to make sure your signal sounds the way you want it to. That's why we do testing, okay? Take another look at the webcam real quick, and you'll see instantly a little different from the previous night. If you take a look, as we go up 40 meters, remember we talked once you reach 7.2 megahertz, you start seeing shortwave broadcasters. Look at all the activity now that's past 7.2. That's because propagation has improved on 40 meters. We'll take a look and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
All right, Dave. Listen, why don't you go ahead and crank it up here? It's about time. I think everybody's ready.
All right, so now there's 7.2, and now you're going to start seeing some shortwave. Now, it sounds like this, and the reason we sound like this at this point, for people who are new hams or would like to be a ham radio operator, it's because we're using the single sideband decoder, basically. We're on single sideband in terms of our mode selection. So it's similar like when you listen to your radio, like a tabletop or your car radio, you switch from AM to FM. It's just simply a different method this way of broadcasting. Sideband goes from a center frequency, and instead of broadcasting, say, in both directions of that center frequency, sideband only goes from the center frequency one direction, okay? If you're above 10 megahertz, you're using upper sideband. So what that means is you're going to go from the center frequency up 3 kilohertz, making sure you haven't adjusted it for a wider transmission pattern, right? Okay. So if you're on lower sideband below 10 megahertz, you're then going to be broadcasting lower sideband. So from the center frequency down 3. So that's how it works. On AM, it goes from the center frequency both ways. We talked about that today during the test questions on the technician exam. Now, what we're going to do, I'll move you to the rig cam so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to change the mode to AM. Remember, we couldn't hear the signal. Now, listen to the signal. See, there's the difference. And here's a great example. In fact, let's move to the next one. It's a little stronger signal. Okay. Okay. Let's zoom in. All right. Now, if you take a look carefully on the screen, we're gonna try and move this over as far as we can on the left. Okay. You're going to see over here, it's going to pop up a sideband signal. So you're going to see one signal going just one direction. It's going to be a small line. But look at this one. Here's your center frequency. All right. Now, if we zoom in, we can get a great idea of how wide that is. So let's go 5 kilohertz wide. Okay. This will give you an idea of just how wide that signal is. See that? It takes up the screen. It literally does. You're seeing things over here and over here and over here because it's all part of the signal. Okay, so let's move out 10. That'll give us a better example. I'll turn the volume up so you hear more of the gain. See, this is why move out to 20 kilohertz just to kind of frame it better for you. Okay, so if you look carefully here, center frequency 7235. We're out right about 4 kilohertz, maybe a little wider on both sides. So that means it's about 8 to 9 kilohertz wide. So when we talked earlier today in the technician exam, remember we were talking about technician exam and, that you have to leave space so you don't interfere with the shortwave broadcaster. This is a great example of why. Here's why you don't just move 3 kilohertz away, because the signal is going over 4 kilohertz away on both sides of the transmission. You see, that's why whenever you're near a shortwave station, you always want to avoid the whole spectrum of it. So give it 10 kilohertz at least, but make sure you don't hit another shortwave station, because typically they'll populate maybe every 10 to 20 kilohertz. It's just best when you see shortwave on like a pan adapter screen like this, or if you hear it. For example, great radios like the K3 Elecraft, the Kenwood 590 Sugar Golf, the Yaesu FTDX 3000. The 3000 it's got kind of a band scope on it. Does, but it's not really high def. The 5000 without the spectrum scope, the little station monitor 5000 thing on the top with the 2 speakers. Those radios are like the Yaesu 450D. Okay. There's a lot of radios out there that don't have scopes like this. And what I mean by scopes is screens like this to show you what the signals look like. So the best thing to do is when you tune a radio and you hear one after the other, just get away from them. So that's a great example of why we want to make sure to never interfere with a shortwave broadcaster. And that means if they're on, if let's say you tune in, like in this case, if you take a look carefully at what the frequency is, it's 7.235 megahertz, right? Okay. So that doesn't mean you're going to tune to 7.238 megahertz because you're broadcasting at single sideband 3 kilohertz. First of all, it's lower sideband, so you go right from 7238 to 7235. You're already interfering with it. And even if you go down say to 7.200, sorry, 7.2300 in this example, you could still interfere with it. So just stay away from it. It's the safest thing to do. Remember, we're here for fun, not to lose our licenses, okay? And see, last night, this is what we were missing. We were missing all this shortwave activity on 40 meters. That's what we're missing. And you'll notice also it tunes much faster because it's tuning in large increments because there's so many stations out there. See? Just a lot of signals. And just because the one, just because they're very small looking, they aren't so obvious as the one we just showed. There's still stations. There's still shortwave stations. So that's why if you're on 40 meters at night, just stay clear of them. And see, this looks like, in this case, that this broadcaster's not broadcasting very wide. I assure you they are. Stay away. Okay, I think we made the point. So, shortwave, back on 40, that means propagation's improved tremendously. If we go down 40 meters a little bit and we take a look at the bands, you're going to find that they're going to be a lot better than last night as well. This was a real treat to see this today because, for me, it's fun to work shortwave bands and listen to the different stations, but it's great to make calls too, okay? So on 40 meters right now, look at all the activity, and it's because it's working.
How did that go? And let's see. It gets pretty for a little bit, then it looks grim.
Look how close they are.
Whiskey Delta 4 Julia Delta acá en Carolina del Norte.
Some DX right there.
Qué bueno que nos está escuchando, colega. No, hombre, de repente se me viene un ruido muy intenso por acá y pero por la radio, no mucho,
But you see, they're very close. Here's 7133, and if we go up here, we're at 7138. They're only 5 kilohertz apart. So when you have single sideband, and this is a good example of lower sideband, okay? Lower sideband, you see the smaller signal. It's not as wide as the shortwave. And there's yet another one. These guys are all close together. So it's 7133.
Buenos días, José Luis.
I just lost that transmission there. $71.30, right? So they're like literally there was 3 stations that tight. So when you see that, propagation's pretty good. Now, typically, I can tell you in the 40-meter band, when you're working 40, at least here from the West Coast, the people in the South Pacific, New Guinea, Australia, New Zealand, Cook Islands, the Marshall Islands, Samoa, Hawaii, all of those frequencies that they use tend to be lower on 40 meters, meaning they'll be between about 7.130 and about 7.70. Okay, 7.170. That's basically the area where you find a ton of work in the South Pacific. So even people in the Midwest and the mountain states of the United States, they can find them. They broadcast a lot of beams from that area, but they come in strong to the United States. That's a great DX window if you want to work the South Pacific. Okay, just a short one. We're checking our audio. I've made a couple of quick adjustments. I want to listen back on it. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned maybe a little out of it, and hopefully I will too, because I just did an audio check. Didn't tell you all of that. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you soon. Maybe some contesting today. We'll see. Until then, God bless you. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show, everybody. It's honestly, and this means the very truth from me, it's an honor to do this because I just want, if I can help one ham be encouraged to get their license and go out and get it, mission accomplished. That'll make my day because I waited too long to get my license because I thought it would just be too hard. It's not too hard. You can do this and you will do this. Thanks for watching. See you, everybody. God bless you. Good night.